Hey guys, welcome back to another quick Splarshy countdown. Today I'll be looking at my top 4 favorite episodes of the Bob Newhart Show Season 5. The Bob Newhart Show is my favorite sitcom of all time, and Season 5 is my second favorite season after Season 1. So let's get started. Number 4 is Caged Fury. It is episode 2 of this season. In this episode, they're going to celebrate the bicentennial of our country, and they decide to have a party. And everybody except Bob, Emily, and Carlin end up dressing up as Uncle Sam for the bicentennial, which is supposed to be comical. More or less it is, but the main thing going for this episode is that Bob and Emily go down to their storage locker to get their punch bowl for the party and accidentally lock themselves in and don't know when they'll be able to get out. And it's just a pretty funny episode. Everyone does a good job in their part here in the episode, especially Bob and Emily and Mr. Carlin. And it's just a good episode. Originally, when I saw it on TV when I was younger, I thought it was a little too joke heavy, but still, it's a pretty good episode and worth watching, and one of the better examples of Season 5, but definitely not as good as my top 3 picks. So let's continue. Number 3. This is where stuff really gets good. Number 3 is the Great Rent Strike, episode 5 of this season. And basically in this episode, the apartment building where Emily and Bob and Howard live, it's in disrepair. At first, the air conditioning doesn't work, and then the heat doesn't work, and all kinds of stuff. And at first, it's really hot in the apartment complex, and then it's really cold in the apartment complex. So they complain, and they decide to organize a rent strike to have them fix the problems: the heat, the shower, the elevator, and all kinds of stuff, to no avail. And so Mr. Carlin ends up buying their apartment complex, and even though he bought it, even though he's one of Bob's patients, he decides he's not going to do anything because it'd be a major expenditure. He decides not to fix anything, fix the heat, fix the shower, fix anything. And so Bob schedules a session in his apartment where he believes Mr. Carlin needs him as a psychologist more than Bob needs him. And it's just a good episode. It's very well put together. The story is woven really well in ways that you might not immediately think of. The idea that at the beginning, Carol's typewriter is missing some letters, and then later on, Jerry is working on the typewriter. It's like its own kind of continuity within the episode. And there's several little things that just connect together in a really nice way that you wouldn't expect. All these little callbacks to earlier moments that really were the icing on the cake. Not to mention Howard in this episode, played by Bill Daly. He's just really funny because, he's getting in their bed with him under the covers to keep warm, and he's complaining about the situation. And then whenever the landlord shows up, he just goes, "Oh, I'm glad to live in this place," Just a very funny episode. Number 2, episode 8, A Crime Most Foul. I think this is a wonderful episode. Basically, in this episode, Bob gets a tape recorder, and he kind of uses it for his job and as a toy. And it ends up missing, and he accuses everybody of stealing it. Just very funny. Bob is suspicious of everybody taking it, and it's just very funny. And then the end, which I'm not going to spoil, really pays off. Just a very, very funny episode. Number 1. Okay, this episode is one of my top 5 favorite episodes of the entire series. This episode is called Death Be My Destiny. You might be able to see I wrote a review on IMDb about this particular episode, and it's just wonderful. It's basically Bob falls into an elevator shaft and clings onto the cable for dear life and survives and doesn't fall to his death. And after that, Bob fears death. Bob has a patient who is scared to do anything, and Bob was like, "Go out, be adventurous." And then after his near-death experience, Bob doesn't want to do anything. But Bob's patient says, "But what about those things you said?" and pushes him to get back on the elevator, pushes him to take back control of his life. And it's a very interesting episode about death and life and how people's fear, and because everyone's dealt with loss in some way or another and had to face their own mortality. And this episode just looks at that psychologically, exemplifies it, brings out the humor in such a topic, and I thoroughly recommend it to anyone. So until next time, this has been a quick Splarshy countdown.